Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Echo, a Taylor podcast. I'm your host tonight, Lee Adams, and I'm with Kelly Matthews, who is a avid dreamer and has been having lucid dreams and astral projections most of her life. Together, we explore some of Kelly's past experiences, as well as where she's going with her dream practice and what that entails. We also talk about her personal website, which is dreamjournal.net, and how people can go on there and talk about their dreams and do a little bit of research about their dreams. And it's overall pretty exciting stuff. So without further ado, let's just get to it. Kelly, thanks for spending time with me today and talking about dreams and your experiences. And can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got interested in the subject of dreams and out-of-body experiences and everything that you're pretty much interested in?
Sure. My name's Kelly Matthews, and I think I've always had really good dream recall. Like even as a child, um, I remember remembering my dreams. And then when I was a teenager, maybe around 14, I started getting sleep paralysis, which was about a 12-year stint. I'd say 3 or 4 years, it was every night, and then it gradually decreased. Um, so I'd say 3 or 4 years. Like I said, it was happening every night. And then after I got out of college, the internet finally was a thing. And I had heard about lucid dreaming and decided to get online and just do some research on lucid dreaming. And then I ran across an article on the MSNBC website, is when I was like 28. And it was about sleep paralysis. And it went into what it was, and it pretty much described my symptoms and all of this stuff. And it was a very great thing to read. I'd never told anyone about it, and it gave me some insight into what was really happening. And that was kind of the launching point. I started experimenting with it, and I can go into a little more detail about that later. But it shifted for me. It was a very terrifying, traumatizing experience for a long time, and then it wasn't anymore. So, and then started researching lucid dreaming, and got lucid for my first time probably about 6 months later. Had some out of body experiences, and I actually had a memory of one that I had when I was like 4, which I found kind of odd, but it was a pretty clear memory. It just happened one day, and I remembered waking up outside of my house, standing in the middle of the street, looking at the house, and it was probably dawn, and wondering how I got outside, and then suddenly I was, sitting up in my bed awake. So I know, but I don't know what you call that. I mean, the fact that I remembered it years later, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a false memory. Like, I'm pretty sure it happened. So, and then, I'm a web programmer by trade. That's one of the things I do. So in 2002, I decided to start a online dream journal. Actually, I think it was 2001, where people could record their dreams and put that online. And it's still online 16 years later. Probably have about maybe 25,000 people using the site, about almost 250,000 dreams recorded.
That's awesome.
And yeah. So that's slowly over time. It's been a labor of love. Don't make money off it or anything like that. So I just work on it as I have time and try to improve it. And so it's always an ongoing process. And over the next actual year or two, I have a lot planned. It's just a matter of getting some time carved out to get some stuff done. So.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like your dream progress kind of went from having normal or just remembering your dreams to sleep paralysis to having lucid dreams, then to out of body experiences. Is that kind of correct, I guess?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything happening in your life that kind of initiated the sleep paralysis experiences? Because typically people kind of like maybe have some stressors or something like that that causes those experiences, but sometimes it also just pops out of nowhere. And I'm interested to know what initiated that and then kind of drove you into having lucid experiences.
Well, the timing was interesting. You and I have discussed this before. I won't go into detail, but there were some things going on in my family with my brother, and it coincided. So
Okay.
I was very stressed at the time, and my family life was basically in upheaval when it started. So yeah, there was definitely stress. I was also a religious back sleeper. Like I always slept on my back, and which is a big, it helps you get sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, stress for sure. And it's crazy when I think back. I remember in high school just always being so tired in class and falling asleep in class. And I guess when you're that age, you just don't really put two and two together. But it's because I was never getting a good night's sleep. I was up every night. I would have it sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a night. I was scared to go back to sleep. So it definitely affected me just on that level as well, not getting a good night.
Yeah, I totally can relate in that way. Yeah, I mean, so what's really interesting is I'm actually writing about this process right now, where people, and specifically myself, I'm kind of writing about my personal experiences where I started having sleep paralysis, and then it kind of opened the doorway to these other experiences like lucid dreaming and out of body experience. So I'm interested in understanding how you kind of use sleep paralysis, like how you learned about it, how you overcame the experience, or if it continued on even though you were having lucid dreams.
Okay, so when I found that article online, I was reading through it, and one of the hardest parts of sleep paralysis for me was it always felt like I was suffocating.
Okay.
I was. It's like I knew what was going on. I knew I was caught between this sleep wake state. I didn't understand why it felt like I couldn't breathe. Like I didn't think a creature was sitting on my chest or anything like that. I know there's a lot of mythology behind that, but nonetheless, it felt like I couldn't breathe. So every time I would immediately go into this panic mode because I thought I was going to die. And when I found the article, it touched on people feeling like they couldn't breathe, and it gave the reason that when you're in REM, you are basically paralyzed from the chest down. So even though you are breathing, you don't feel it. And so that right there was like, what?
Yeah.
Hold on, you mean I really can breathe? So I was excited to have it happen again so I could test it out and just see if I could calm myself. And so it did. It happened like within a week. And when I basically was talking to myself, just reminding myself, you can breathe, it's okay, just calm down. And probably within about 60 seconds, I was calm. I didn't feel like I was suffocating. It was mind blowing. I was like, oh my God, I've been tortured by this for 14 years. And here I am, not able to breathe or able to breathe. And so then oftentimes too, like this article touched on, there was this dark, shadowy presence that was always there. It always felt evil. Sometimes I'd hear voices. And it mentioned that in the article too. And I'm like, okay, so this is a common thing, but why?
Yeah.
And then my theory at the time was like, well, if I'm in a state of fear, maybe I'm creating it myself. I don't know. And so I got sleep paralysis again, and I'm laying there calm. Now I'm able to not have the breathing issues. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, I wonder if the sleepy or the creepy shadowy guy, is going to walk in the room. And sure enough, I hear the door open and I hear someone walk in the room. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, okay, I wonder if the shadowy guy is going to walk over to the bed. And sure enough, he walks over to the bed. And wonder if the shadowy guy is going to touch my leg. And I feel a hand on my leg. And of course I freak out and I wake myself up. But then I'm like, wait, did that really happen? Did I make that happen? Was that, kind of like with a lucid dream, you know what I mean? It was
Right.
just, I pretty much convinced myself that I had made it happen. Now, I'm sure some people would argue that, and, that you can really, meet entities in that state. And I'm definitely not saying you can't, but in my situation, I think I made that happen. And, so that's all it took. It was like, okay, what's there to be scared of? I mean, it was liberating for me. And from that point on, anytime I had sleep paralysis, I mean, I've never had a scary experience since. I don't have it like I used to. I wish I did. Most people think I'm nuts, but
Yeah.
because I know it's a great launching pad into either a lucid dream or an out of body experience, because I've done it many times from there. So that was kind of the start. And then when I moved to California in like 2002, I think, then it really started getting interesting. Like I would go into sleep paralysis and suddenly just roll out of, my body, and I'd be floating around, or I'd get a lot of really neat auditory hallucinations, like radio stations. And I'd always sit there and try to like listen for a call letter. It was almost like someone was changing the channel, and I would be picking up, I felt like I was really hearing some kind of radio wave. I mean,
Right.
I just was so sure. And heard some other things that were kind of profound in that state. And then I had two instances when I was in California where with me, sleep paralysis always happened right as I was falling asleep. Like some people get it as they're waking up. And I knew because I could check the clock, like I've only been out for 3 minutes,
Right.
or whatever. So one night I'm laying there, and that feeling you get when you start to fall asleep and you jerk,
Yeah.
it's like you're falling.
Totally.
Well, that happened. Yeah, it happened, but I didn't jerk awake. And I literally thought I was dying. I didn't know what was going on. Like I'm, suddenly falling into this state, and the sound shifted. I could see the room, and it's like the light shifted. And then I realized I just fell asleep without losing consciousness. It was the first time that had happened where I didn't black out first and then wake up, a second later in sleep paralysis. And so that was pretty mind blowing that because I know there's, Buddhist monks try to get to that state, and here it just randomly happened to me. And I didn't find that out till later, but so I'm laying there and I open my eyes. I'm pretty sure my physical eyes were open because I could see everything in the room like it was. It wasn't like I was seeing, sometimes you get just completely different scene of your room, and it was definitely my room. And I see this bright green light glowing out of my chest. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I didn't know what colors chakras were or any of that. I knew about them, but, I knew chakra and I knew they had colors. That's it. So I was looking at the light, and I just felt very calm and at peace and thought it was awesome. And so I woke myself up and I went and Googled heart chakra, and sure enough, it's green. And I was like, whoa, how would I have even known that? It wasn't even in my tucked away, and maybe, well, who knows? But I didn't know what color it was offhand. And then I had another instance where I fell asleep without losing consciousness, and I sat up. I'm pretty sure it was my energy self, not my physical body. And I was looking around the loft that I was in, and everything in the room had an aura around it. Like I could see it just as it was, but I was picking up, and I have my own theory. It's like maybe because we're in a different brain frequency, we can pick up more light than normal. I don't know, or what are we really seeing with at that point? I don't know. But it didn't seem like it seemed more like something you would see if you were on LSD or something like that, where there were colorful halos around everything. And so those, that time in California was really really interesting and, and exciting because I would have all these really cool experiences, and I'd leave my body and go flying out the window and flying around town, and um, just cool stuff like that. I wouldn't say most of my out of bodies have been relatively local.
Mm.
Um, I haven't had any in a while actually. But and it depends too, because I don't know if you've read the book. I think we talked about this, The Phase.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And, that's a whole different theory where, lucidity, out of body, it's all the same space. But, I've been doing those or using those tactics recently and have, successfully rolled out of my body in the morning. But then it pretty much becomes what I'd call a lucid dream, not an out of body experience, which to me seem different,
Right.
I mean, if you compare it, they definitely seem different. So I totally went off on a tangent there.
No, that's
but...
okay. Well, I mean, it's interesting that things changed for you when you went to California too. I'm really interested in geographical locations and their effects on people because I was in the military and moved probably, relatively close to about once a year. So I experienced sleep paralysis in different areas of the country and the world, and have noticed dramatic changes based on that. And so I'm
Yeah.
wondering, was there, did you feel different in California? Was something happening in California that you could attribute to having those experiences like increase, or do you, um, is it kind of an unknown to you?
I mean, I was in my early 30s. I was a late bloomer when it came to psychedelics.
Oh, okay.
So I was experimenting with things like that, but most of those experiences I was sober, wasn't
Yeah.
because of that. But nonetheless, I still think there's something to be said for, when you start opening certain doors, things will begin to happen.
Definitely.
So that could be part of it. Just the fact that I had quit my job and moved, and I was probably feeling good and free, and didn't have to work for a while, and it was just a different. I literally sold my condo and up and moved to California.
Nice.
So yeah, it was definitely a new chapter in that regard.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense too. With your experiences like since then, do you find some type of like progression taking place? Like, how are you using these experiences, like integrating into your life, or do you see them just kind of as random events that take place, and then you're interested in knowing what they are and exploring that area, but you really haven't gained too much from that? Trying to find out what your kind of perspective is of these experiences over time.
Yeah, I think when all that was going on in California, like it was more, I was in awe. Like my spiritual growth didn't really start. I mean, it's really always starting, whatever. But I didn't really focus on it much until I was almost 40. So I mean, I was, just everything, and a lot of that had to do with what I went through as a kid and dealing with everything with my brother later and all of that. That it just kind of hindered, hindered a lot. But um, what was the question?
How you like perceive these experiences? Do they change
Oh
over
yeah,
time to like influence your life, or kind of
I
what's the
think more
story?
so now. Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely believe there's a lot of power in just even regular dreams, let alone, lucidity and, lucid dreams. I mean, out of body experiences are great too, but lucid dreams to me are like what I really like, because I know it's this. How can I put it? For me, it's like you're out of your day to day crap. You're
Yeah.
like you're in a mental space that has no obstacles. So if you want to work on some kind of self healing or anything like that, I think it's more effective. Just like maybe someone that meditates a couple hours and does something. You're in a space that it's going to work better, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but So I'm just starting, like in the last, I'd say 8-10 years, to really start researching and using dreams to for self knowledge and self growth. Really,
I
I mean,
see.
whereas before it was more, oh, this is so cool, and there would be some profound things, but it was cool, like a psychedelic experience was
Yeah.
at that age. Whereas now, even that's changed. I mean, anything like that at this point in my life, I want to use as, you know, I want it to be a tool for growth, not, hey,
Yeah,
let's go
definitely.
party.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like going to the fair to me. So like lucid dreams, it's this great adventure, and you're like, oh, I can go on all these rides and I can do things, like I can change reality or mess with time and mess with the people in there, things like that. But then eventually you start figuring out there's like a deeper story to this, and it's beyond the control game, that you play. I'm not sure if that resonates with you.
Oh yeah, I mean, the book that woke me up to that was the one by Robert Wagner, Gateway to the Inner Self.
Mm.
Um, I same thing. I'd get lucid, I'd fly, I'd do what everyone does in lucid dreams, and eventually that gets kind of old, even though it's fun. And then I read his book, and I think I even took a workshop with him where it was like, come up with a question that you want to know about yourself, or even about something else, and pose the question to the dream. And I'm like, oh wow, how come I never thought of that? So I would start doing that, and it was sometimes the answer was like, what? Other times it was quite profound. Um, I've done I've studied energy healing for a while. I've done Reiki and energy healing
Okay.
while lucid on myself and on other people. Um, so I like to experiment, but I definitely see it as um, a space that you can definitely go deep and you know ask questions to your unconscious or to whoever you're asking it
Yeah.
to, and get some profound answers. So.
Interesting. What are some of the profound questions that you've asked that you think have really given you some clear answers, or maybe even opened up some more questions?
Well, recently I asked one, and it was more, okay, I'm curious what I'll get as an answer. So I asked, show me what love is.
Hmm.
And, I mean, you could get so many answers there because it's not a black and white question. And I saw, how you've seen those videos of flocks of birds that are moving in unison as the wind blows them around.
Yeah.
That's basically what I saw. And I was like, oh, even in the dream, I'm like, oh, I get that.
Yeah.
Community working together, it takes two, action, movement, so it was I wouldn't say it was the answer, but it was definitely an answer, that meaning there's multiple answers to that question. But it was definitely an answer I understood and gave me a little bit of perspective on, maybe how I even look at love. And so there's an example.
Yeah,
I'd
definitely.
have to look over my journal to get some more, but I've definitely asked.
Yeah, that's good. You keep a dream journal. How long have you been doing that?
Well, ever since I started the website.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really had never done it before, and I even, like I said, I've had the website online since 2001, and if you look at my journal, you'll see like 3-year period where I didn't record at all,
Uh,
because there was so much going on in my life, and um, yet there's some that I still remember clearly that I probably didn't record that I could go back and write about. So, um, so yeah, I'd say since 2001 I've been recording dreams.
Interesting. That's great. I mean, when you look through your dream journals and reflect on these experiences that you have, do you often find yourself like forgetting dreams that you've had and then kind of immediately remembering them?
Well, really both. I mean, some, yeah, I'll totally forget because you have hundreds and hundreds. You're not going to remember them all. and I'll be reading it and I'll be like, oh, I totally remember that dream. And then there's others that I read and I'm like, I do not remember any of this. It's like,
Yeah.
how can I not remember any of it? I don't get it. So, it's weird that, and it probably depended on maybe what was going on in my life at that time, that maybe I recorded it quickly and just, it was gone, from my mind at that point. But, so yeah, both.
Interesting. Yeah. You mentioned before we started recording about bringing back a past memory from a lucid experience that you had. You kind of immediately just recalled it, and I was interested in to understanding what that dream was about, and kind of like the sensation of remembering this experience.
It was weird. I mean, it was kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. And I know that I think I was researching out of body experiences at the time or something. And I just had this memory where I could literally see myself standing outside in front of my house. I must have been like 4 or 5. So, I mean, it was, way, way back. Um, so, who's to say if it happened or not, but it's odd that I would just have this memory that would come back to me of this happening. And, they say kids have out of body experiences all the time. We probably just don't at that age talk to anyone about it, so it doesn't get put into our memory
Yeah.
and go on. But nonetheless, there it was. And, I don't, it was more just like an out of body. It wasn't even a dream in the sense that, I was just standing outside in front of my house and I was confused as to how I could be standing outside. How did I get out here?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it was dawn, like the sun was just coming up. And then when I was awake in my bed, the sun was just coming up. It's like everything lined up. It was really strange.
Interesting. Yeah. You had mentioned also the possibility of having false memories from dreams, and because you said, how do you know this was not a false memory, or it was a real memory? And I'm interested to understand your perspective of false memories from your dream experiences, and how you kind of see those.
I don't know if, I mean, this is really the only one I've ever had that came up like, 3 decades later. So I don't know. I mean, how do you know if a memory in a dream is false? You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like, I've read articles on even real life experience. Say you went through something traumatic that 20 years later, as you retell the story, you're not full, you're remembering it differently than it happened. And obviously, I'm sure you're remembering it for the most part, but that things change
Right.
in your recollection. So, yeah, I don't know quite how to answer that question just because I'm not sure.
Well, I've definitely
Yeah.
experienced like false memories inside of dreams, and it would make sense because when you have a dream, just a normal dream, not a lucid dream, or even a lucid dream, you're usually somewhere and there's like some type of backstory a little bit, far enough at least that
Yeah.
you kind of feel like you're actually supposed to be there and things aren't doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And it's kind of like, it's kind of shocking to think that your brains are capable of creating a story, even though it's not important to like what's taking place right now, but it feels like it's a continuation of like your life inside of the dream
Oh,
experience.
yeah. I mean, I can't give you specifics, but I've definitely had dreams where it's like you just know the backstory while you're in the dream. You just have this whole lifetime of some other life, and then of course that can take you down other rabbit holes that will maybe it was a life I lived at one point. Who
Yeah.
knows? But um, still, it's intriguing. And then I don't know where I was going to go with that, but yeah, I do have an oddly, they say when we dream, when we're REM, we're mostly in our right brain, not too analytical, so we won't remember real facts and stuff easily. Yet I seem to. I mean, I can tell someone my phone number in my dream, my social
Huh.
security number. It's weird. And, and I know I'm not supposed to be able to. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. How is this possible? But yeah, I'm very analytical to begin with. Um, and, but it is strange. And even when I'm lucid, but then there's other times where like I had a lucid dream and I went to visit this was recent actually. I flew up into space and flew over to Portugal to visit my friend Claudio. And in the dream, there was a guide with me, and I was like, hey, I have his address on my computer. Can I access that from here? I was kind of being funny because I knew I couldn't. But yet I did have his address on my computer. So I remembered that correctly. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, wait, no, he works at a coffee shop. Like, he doesn't work at a coffee shop, So it was like this completely false piece of information that I was so sure, and then I realized, oh, it's Moe's coffee shop and stuff. And so then when I told him, he was like, what?
Oh, wow.
So found that odd, that some information I remembered was true. And then I was, coming up with this false information that I was lucid, like,
interesting. Yeah, it sounds like two counteracting like views happening at the same time, and you're confused about like which one was kind of true.
Right.
It's cool. What are some experiences you've had with like in a lucid dream with dream characters? Have you noticed any characters responding oddly to your actions or aggressively or anything like that?
I don't get much aggression. I mean, if I pose questions to characters, it's usually just weird. I have had, it depends. Like if I approach a character in a lucid dream, it tends to be kind of strange. But if a character approaches me, then it seems to have more depth. So, but again, they're approaching me, they're coming up and saying something to me, or versus me asking them a question. So I tend to go, for the most part, I probably should experiment more with characters, but I tend to go kind of solo and just start doing things, or and not to say that always happened. I think when everyone starts getting lucid, all you want to do is have sex. And
yeah.
But, obviously that takes two, but
it's pretty normal, I think, for people to want to do that, from what I hear anyways and experience. Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to know the difference between, in your perspective, what lucid dreaming is and out-of-body experiences, because I've heard some of your dreams in this interview so far, and especially the one where you visited your friend. That kind of sounded to me like an out-of-body experience where you go travel to visit someone, you're traveling out of your body, kind of. So I want to understand from you what you see as the difference between the two.
Hard to say. I mean, the ones that I would say for sure were out of bodies. I was in my room, I left my body, I went out the window, or something like that, where I physically, I saw the room as it was for the most part. Whereas lucid dream like the one the other day that I just told you about, I used the technique, from the phase, and I rolled out of my body. So it's like, but yet it seemed very dreamlike too, or lucid dreamlike at least. So it's hard to say. Like when it's the first time though, I successfully was able to, like in lucid dreams, I usually can't do this. I'll try to like fly up into space and get to the moon or see the Earth, and it just never works out. Yet this time it did. So, although the Earth looked a little different, like the land masses weren't identical to what they are. But the one thing that was really interesting was at the end of that dream, I guess I'd given up on finding Claudio, and I was up floating in the sky. And it was a sunny day, and there's a little girl and her mother standing down below me on the ground, and she's like, Mom, look, Mom. And she's looking up, and she's like, oh, yeah, I see that. And I'm like, they're pointing at me. What? Do they see my body? And then I looked over, and next to me, there's like 3 or 4 orbs of light just floating in the air. And then I realized that I'm probably an orb of light, too. I mean, that's what my mind thought. Are they seeing me as I'm seeing? Like, are these other people also out of their body? It was. I've never had that one before. So that was, but I have heard about orbs, when you go out of body. So, I thought that was interesting, but yeah, it's hard to, I would totally be theorizing. I do feel like there's a difference. Like when I say like physically, it feels different when I leave my body than when I just wake up in a lucid dream.
Right.
And even the lucid dreams where I roll out, and because those are interesting, you're rolling, you're not losing consciousness. You know, I wake up and then I don't move and I start to rock or something, and suddenly I'm out. And you know, usually the whole room is dark, and I start to feel around until something visual comes into play, and go from there.
That makes sense. What with your experiences of lucid dreams and out of body experiences, what are the actions that you take inside those experiences? Are those different as well?
Good question. I mean, I have more lucid dreams than I do out of bodies. I think, you know, that's as much as I like lucid dreaming, I'd really love to explore out of body experiences more, because most of the ones I had, unless you count the one from the other day, were when I was in California. And so I was more just in awe than I was like really trying to, you know, find out what this was. And so, God, I left the question again. I'm getting old, man.
It's okay. What were the sorry.
Oh,
what,
the things I do.
yeah, the
well, like
differences.
when I get lucid, I always like to go in with some kind of intention, because it seems, you know, as most people know, that if you have a plan, it lasts longer. And so I try to go in at least with a question, or, you know, with a task, maybe to focus on some kind of physical healing of something I'm going through, or to ask a question, or, you know, to even like that one where I was going to go see Claudio. I had two. The first thing was to go to a mirror, which I did. And then the second thing that I was going to do was fly around the earth. And then, of course, when I'm up, I look down, I'm like, oh, it's Europe. Let me go see Claudio, you know. So then it took off from there. So, and it was funny because that night he had a dream that he'd gone into space.
Oh,
and
that's interesting.
we were both like, what? Yeah. So it was very synchronistic in that regard. But yeah.
So it sounds like you explore a little bit more in an out of body experience, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't know if they're different or not. And that's the thing. It's like there's so many theories out there, but yet I do know people who have had like serious out of body. So I'm just not at that level yet. You know, maybe if I had, I'd be like, oh, there's definitely a difference. You know?
Yeah.
It's, or maybe what I am having is out of bodies and I'm just not realizing it. It's hard to say.
Well, I kind of set you up for like failure on those questions. You know, they're hard questions to answer because I don't think there is an answer, but I think getting different people's perspectives is important in this area. But I mean, I personally agree with you. I think, and a lot of other people do, and I'm sure you know that, is that there is no difference. That they're kind of like different. They're phases. You know, like the book is called or whatever. And you're experiencing like some type of vibrational phase in a lucid dream, and then slightly different, maybe, or higher phase or higher vibration or whatever. Who knows what the vibration level is, but you're experiencing slightly something different in that other experience, and it allows you to do other things that you typically maybe couldn't do in a lucid dream, or you may get elements of that. It's kind of like a blurry image and then a more clear image kind of thing, I think.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know about your experience with the mirror. You didn't bring that up with your exploration about visiting your friend. And mirrors are always interesting to me because they provide a reflection. So if you wouldn't mind telling me about that, that'd be cool.
Yeah, mine are always so weird when I look at. I mean, usually I'm seeing a bunch of different people. You know, one right after the other. In this case, I went into my bathroom. I looked in the mirror, and there was a guy standing there looking at me, but it wasn't me. You know, I knew it wasn't me. So yet he was in the mirror. So I'm like, is this a window? You know, what's going on?
Yeah.
And he was talking to me, but I couldn't hear him. Like his mouth was moving, and I'm just like, you know, I can't hear you. So he walks off. Another guy, you know, it was like literally 3 or 4 guys that walked up, and then I'm like, okay, whatever, and I left because it was just like, I'm not a man, but maybe I was. I don't know. Yeah, it was strange. I mean, I've had other ones where same deal. I rarely see myself, and even when I'm having a non-lucid dream and I'm dealing with a mirror, sometimes I see myself, but other times, you know, like I remember in one dream I was Asian, and I remember it was really interesting because I wasn't lucid, but it was very vivid, and I remember like just really examining my face, my eyes in particular. I thought it was kind of neat, like they you know looked like I was Asian, and it was just like wow, you know, and I don't know how to explain that, but it didn't change. Like it's who I was looking at, you know, versus when I get lucid, my face tends to change. You know, I'll be multiple people.
Interesting. Yeah, I've definitely had similar experiences where I look in the mirror and it's not me, but it is very accurate to like where I'm moving my other body parts and moving my facial expression. So I know it is a reflection of myself, but it's definitely not who am. It's kind of startling a little bit.
Well, I've got to say this. I had an experience when I was in California with mushrooms, and I was looking in the mirror, which they say don't do that, but I did. I was looking in the mirror, and I'd had a fair amount, and I'm looking back at myself, obviously, and suddenly my eyes turn into like cat eyes, you know, with the slit, and I'm just like, oh my god. And then I'm staring straight ahead, and the eyes in the mirror look to the right. And I freaked out because I'm like, you know, it freaked me out for whatever reason. It was someone else, you know, looking back and decided to look to the side, and I had to run out of the bathroom. Like, but it was cool at the same time. It's always like scary but intriguing.
Yeah, I see sleep paralysis the same way. So scary but intriguing.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Well, I would like to ask you some about your experiences on psychedelics and how they interacted with your dreams as well. I think you've read Dreaming Wide Awake by David Brown, and he talks about it extensively in there. So I think the dialogue is getting a lot more open to people hearing about psychedelic experiences. So why don't we dive into that? Tell me about some of that.
Okay. Well, okay, here's a neat one. I mean, I don't know. It had to have been related to doing mushrooms, but I was at a friend's house dog sitting, and I had done a mild amount of mushrooms, nothing crazy. And I'd come down and was going to sleep. And this was so weird. Have you ever heard like a power transformer, you know, go off in the neighborhood or something, and you hear this like just this sound of like power kind of shutting down?
Oh yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it. It's like you. And so I'm laying there in bed, and it was like someone flipped a switch, and all light, sound, and feeling just kind of was gone. And I was a point of consciousness in a black void. Thought I had died. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I wasn't scared though, but it was not, I couldn't even hear myself breathing, no heartbeat. I mean, you know, my ears ring naturally, none of that. It was complete silence, complete dark. And I just was there and did not know what happened. And then probably 20 to 30 seconds later, someone flipped the switch again, and it all came back. And there I was laying in bed. And who knows? Maybe I died. Maybe I went out of my body. I can't tell you what happened. But I did do mushrooms that night. So it was, you know, I don't know if that was you know, obviously I wasn't still high at that point, but it might have somehow opened me up to something. I don't know. It was quite and I've researched that one. I've found a small handful of people that talk about a black void, but not quite getting there the way, you know, the way I did.
Right. So. Yeah. Definitely been there with through dream practices, but not through a psychedelic experience. So maybe it just amplified the experience of your typical sleep paralysis experience, and then you were consciously aware of the transition that normally like you described before, having the awareness of actually going to sleep consciously.
Oh yeah, except then I can still hear my breath. I can, this was like I was gone. I
Yeah.
was healthy.
Interesting.
Sure.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah,
Have you
it
noticed
was.
like them having any effects long term on your dreams, or throughout the years?
I mean, I think usually, it's hard to say because I have pretty good recall and pretty vivid dreams to begin with. I will say, like, for years, for a few years, I smoked pot like every day.
Yeah.
And then I quit. And oh my God, it was like, oh, why have I been smoking? I forgot about dreaming, it totally, but I was dealing with stuff, whatever. It got me through. And, but then my dream life came back. And so now I rarely do that because it affects my dream. And but with things like mushrooms, I think I definitely get like a residual, where they'll be more vivid, maybe a little more profound. I have had dreams though where in the dream I'm like, I'm going to take some mushrooms, and I'll have a full on psychedelic experience in my dream. Now it doesn't last as long, but it's literally like you feel like you've ingested mushrooms. You have that feeling of the mushroom. You're seeing stuff. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm assuming, if you've never done mushrooms and you did them in your dream, I'd be curious what would happen to somebody.
Yeah.
Like if they have that in their DNA and maybe they'd really, you know what I mean? It's like, I'd love some people who have never done psychedelics to try that experiment.
I have read of somebody, I think it was actually in David Brown's book, where they never had done psychedelics before, and then they took them in a dreams, and they had an experience, and then they took them in real life, and they afterwards, and they said they were very similar.
Okay, yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
But I don't know if like there's a lot of cultural and visual images from psychedelic art and stuff like that that would kind of give you like an idea of what you probably experience enough, to generate it.
Really unique, right?
Yeah.
Although the feeling, there is that feeling that you get physically that.
Definitely, yeah. Very similar to out of body experiences too. And I tend to, saying a lot of my own personal views in this interview, but I tend to think that the psychedelic or the out of body experience is definitely more clear and realistic feeling than using psychedelics. I'm not sure what you think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it depends on how much you do psychedelics, to keep it more mild. But my mind is always much clearer in a lucid dream or out of body than in a psychedelic state for the most part.
So with your out of body experiences, would you say that you're kind of an observer in those experiences, or are you interacting with the world around you?
Well, again, it depends on which were out of body experiences.
Yeah.
Let's say the one where I went and saw Claudio I was definitely interacting. I was talking to people. There was a guide there with me. Like he said, I'm your guide, it's like, okay. But then he went to sleep or something because I went and woke him up and asked him a question. But, so yeah, I like to interact. I have, I'll oftentimes try to conjure up. Now this is more in a lucid dream, and I have yet to be successful with this. So I'll see interesting animals without trying. Like I've seen purple foxes running through the forest and things like that. But, or lions that have like human heads but I've tried to conjure up, because I love like lions and tigers and, I want to conjure up a lion and then pet them,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But no luck so far. So, but I've tried.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned guides quite a few times, so I'm interested to understand the types of guides that you've come in contact with, your experiences, and how they've helped you, or created new ideas inside your mind when you're awake?
I mean, really, this is the one with Claudio is he's going to be famous now. No, I'm kidding. I'm mentioning his name. It was the first time I've ever like experienced someone saying I'm a guide in my dream. Really, the first time. Now maybe they were before without saying that, but you know that it was. So I don't know how to really answer that question. I have had, dreams where I felt someone was significant. Like I got lucid once, and there was a guy that came up to me, and he was talking about. I can't remember the phrase he used, but it was like he was implying that most people were asleep, and I think what he was saying was not like meaning physically asleep, but it seemed profound at the time. I had another sleep paralysis experience once where it was the one where I was hearing all of the radio stations and stuff, and I'm just laying there, taking it all in. And at the very end, I hear like this 6 or 7 year old girl, and she said, "Energy is," and then I woke up, and I was like, "Oh, really? What was she gonna say? Why did I wake up?" And then I'm just pondering it, and then suddenly it hit me that was it. That energy is, that it was just a statement of all. I mean, that's at least what I got out of it. But it was very, very profound to me at the time. That everything is energy, and so. Yeah, I mean, again, with guides, it's hard to say because I don't know if
Yeah.
really running guides other than that.
Well, it sounds like to me that you've met quite a few of them from what you've told me today. I mean, in my perspective, guides are they come in many shapes and colors, and even sometimes the theme of the dream can be a guide itself. Even sleep paralysis, I think, is a guide, and it guides us into dealing with fear and understanding that. So I wouldn't limit your experiences just by the people. It sounds like you've had a lot of guides.
Although I think I had for years I had recurring dreams about my brother, which was it was rough. I mean, short backstory. He's no longer with us, and in the dream, it was while I was in California. He really was still alive, and it was weird because I would wake up and not be sure. I mean, they were that real and that vivid. And sometimes in the dream I'd see him. Other times I would just know he was alive, but I was trying to find him. And it was rough because, you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, oh shit, no, he's not alive, So it was over and over of just this heavy, like, God. And then I'm trying to remember when this happened, but I think it was after I moved back from California. I decided that when I get lucid, I'm going to try to see my brother because it's such an impact on my life.
Right.
And so I got lucid and I called out to him, and there he was right in front of me with this bright light behind him. And it was just like he was right in my face, in his face. He was young, and it was very intense, and real or not to my psyche, it was definitely real and positive and healing. It was like I connected with him, and all I could kind of muster was, even though it wasn't my fault, I was apologizing to him for what he'd been through, and that was it, and but then I don't have those dreams anymore, which is good. I mean, as far as the ones where I think he's alive and all that, and then a good friend of mine was like, well, but he is alive. He was trying to be like, dude, he's just telling you he's still around, and it, depending on your perspective, I'm like, well, I believe that, just in a different way.
Right.
But so, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I have recurring dreams too, and I'm always trying to figure out how to get past them.
Well, I read, so are they like recurring nightmares or just regular dreams?
A lot of it deals with me being in the military still, so I'm constantly doing stuff in the military, trying to get through that. So I'm trying to. They wouldn't call them nightmares, but they wait when I wake up. I'm like, God, I just want to get over this.
Yeah, I was reading. I think it's a book by Michael Katz. It's about a yoga, dream yoga. I forget the title, but just last night I was reading about it. Now he was talking about recurring nightmares, but I think it could apply to any dream. That during the day, like kind of relive the dream in your mind a couple times a day with a different outcome, like kind of work it out. And he said eventually they'll stop. Now I don't know if that's just with nightmares, but I thought it was a really good idea. Like you're basically what was the word he used? But there's a word he uses in the chapter. But you're basically rewriting the dream, and but in your mind, you're trying to visualize an outcome that is satisfactory to you versus maybe what you keep dreaming about, and then eventually it stops happening.
Wow, so, that's a great technique. I will definitely try that. I think it makes sense to me logically that would work because I've had it work for other things in dreams, dream experiences. So that makes sense. Thanks. That's awesome.
Oh,
hopefully
yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll work.
Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I would definitely will. I will probably write about it.
Yeah, I'm looking at a piece of art right now. It's across from me, and it's part of it is a snake eating its tail.
Oh, yeah, there nice.
You go. Just realizing that on the podcast.
Yeah. What do you see your progression happening with your experiences and dreams? Like, what do you perceive the future being with your dream practice, and where are you trying to take it?
Well, obviously on a, technical side or business side, I want to do more with the site. I want to start a podcast. I want to do webinars. I've got all of these things I want to do. We'll see what happens. I'm going, there's a nonprofit called the Institute for Dream Studies.
Okay.
I got that. So I'm going to take a year-long certification with them next year. I basically want to get more academic understanding behind me so I can, I've got all my personal experience, but I definitely want to have just, more academic understanding. And then I'm not sure. I mean, I definitely want the next phase of my life. I've had many careers and businesses and stuff to be focused on dreams. I mean, that's, here's, let me throw this out here. In 2006, I was in California and I did some mushrooms. Gotta love mushrooms, man. I've had the most inspirational things come from mushrooms. I will say that, and never had a bad experience. But I decided while I was on the mushrooms that I'm going to quit my job and start doing web development on the side and focus on the dream site. And 2 weeks later, I quit my job and I've been self-employed ever since.
Wow.
Now, I did not get right into the dream stuff. Too much stuff going on in my life, but it keeps pulling me back. Like I know that's the direction I need to go. I like variety in my life, so I'll always be doing like 10 things. But I want a big focus, or at least if all 10 of those things can be kind of within that arena, it would be great. So I'm not 100% sure where I'll go, and I think just taking this certification course over the next year is really going to help me on my personal dream journey and understanding myself better through dreams. So it's, I see it as obviously beneficial professionally, but as well as personally. So right. I'm excited for that. And, maybe we can revisit each other in a year and we'll see what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess like what about dreams is so interesting to you? Like why are you so focused on it? I mean, you must get something profound out of the experience or want to get something more out of it.
Well, I think I've had some interesting experiences, but I know people that have had really profound experiences. I just know in my gut that there's more to it than, oh, it's just a dream. It's just you reliving your day. I'm I'm an explorer of consciousness, you could say. I'm very intrigued by consciousness, by altered states of consciousness. Dreams is a big part of that. So, it's just it's intriguing to me. It always has been. I don't know why, but I think the fact that I did go through all of that with the sleep paralysis was part of it.
Yeah.
But once I started to try to get lucid, I was able to. And if I really, part of it is I get lazy. It's like
Yeah.
if I like with the phase stuff, okay, I'm going to do this tonight for sure, and I'm going to wake up at 5 and stay up for 20 minutes. If I do that, I almost always get lucid most of the time. I wake up at 5 and I'm like, I'm going. I don't even. It's like I'm too half asleep to. So I think if I really start focusing on it more, I could have a lot more success.
Right.
Really start doing some stuff. But so that's the goal. But I've always been intrigued by it. I'm not sure why really. It's
What would
just,
be success? Like if you had a dream and then you just woke up from it, like out of body or lucid, what would be success to you?
just being able to maintain it for a while, being able to, especially if you're going for lucidity, there's levels of lucidity. So the more lucid I can get, better. And if I go in with a game plan, asking a question or whatever, having succeeded in that, um, yeah, I mean, I have a long list of things I'd love to try. So it's just a matter of getting there and then, starting to do that. But that's like I said, I mean, I know this next year is going to be off the hook with all of that. I just
Yeah.
know it is. When you're studying dreams every day, you're bound to, I mean, that's how I first got lucid. I picked up a book and I was lucid the next day. I mean, literally the next day. It lasted like 5 seconds, but like I got so excited I woke right up.
That's
But
awesome.
I think everyone can probably say that though on their first lucid.
Definitely. Well, it sounds like you have a good game plan ahead of you. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about your website. I know you record, people can go and record dreams, but what's the website and what's it all about?
Well, the address is dreamjournal.net. And as I said, it's been a progression over time, but pretty much the state it's in right now, you can sign up, it's all free. Um, you basically create an account, you create a journal, you can keep the whole thing private. You can invite certain friends who also have an account, where just they can see your dreams, or you can keep it public, or it can be public, but you can mark a certain dream private. There's
Hmm.
all of these ways to keep it hidden. And then obviously you can just enter your dream and leave it at that. But then there's a way to track everything. Like, were you trying to get lucid? Did you get lucid? How lucid were you? How cohesive was the dream? Was it an out of body experience? Then I have all these sections on what was the theme of the dream. And you have like 30 things to choose from, but you can add your own themes as well. Who were the characters in your dream? You can choose, add your own, the setting, the activities, the emotions. So it's you're capable of tracking everything. And then of course it makes it a lot easier to look back over, 5 years and say, wow, from for this year, all my dreams were super stressful and about police and my mother.
Hmm.
And this year they're super calm and they're about puppies and whatever. But you can see trends and I'd love to get to a point where if two people dream about pink elephants in the same night, that somehow they're alerted that they both had a similar dream.
Wow, that'd be cool.
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible with how I'm collecting the data to do that. It's just everything requires time
Right.
as far as programming. Yeah, it doesn't program itself, but it's mobile friendly. That's pretty much it. I mean, the whole idea is create, put your dreams in, but also to create interaction with other people. People can comment on your dreams, interpret your dreams. Although I have a whole school of thought. I think more people are kind of getting to that point of, even I used to have dream symbols on the site, and I've kind of moved away from that because it's like, what a dog in a dream means to me is not necessarily what it means. And even trying to interpret someone else's dream, I definitely like the approach of, well, if it were my dream, here's what it would mean to me, and maybe that'll give you some insight. But, you'll see other people get on there and be like, well, it means that God's mad at you. And I'm like, well, this person might not even be religious. How can you say
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
It's just funny. But so I just, I'll use that as an opportunity to interpret it properly and try to teach the person.
That's cool.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's been fun. And, it's like I said, it's a labor of love, but it's also a platform that, I want that I can use to move forward. Like I said, if I do a podcast or webinars, I've got some folks that I can tap for that might be interested either in participating and or So.
What are some ways that people can get a hold of you, like as you develop some of these additional projects as well?
That's a good question. Well, through my website, through Dream Journal, there's a contact page. I always answer that. Kelly at dreamjournal.net will get you to me. So that's pretty much, I mean, there's a Dream Journal, there's a Dream Journal group on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
I have a couple groups on Facebook. There's one's called the Lucid Dream Project and one's called Dream Journal. And then, so that there as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the website. And thank you for spending your time with me today and discussing your personal dreams and some of those personal experiences you've had. And some of them are private, and it's hard to share some things with people, but it takes courage to do that, and I applaud your courage and your willingness to be open about your experiences, and hopefully other people can hear those experiences and do the same, stand up and start talking to other people about their dreams, because they're important.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
If you enjoyed this episode of Cosmic Echo and would like to learn more about Kelly and her work, you can visit our website at taileaters.com/CE podcast. And there you can click on links that will take you to her work as well as her website. Additionally, you can support this podcast by clicking on our donation page located at the same website. We look forward to bringing you additional episodes in the near future, but until then, happy dreaming.